Hey everyone, what's going on? Hope you're doing great and getting your parkour legs warmed up because I've got a chunky update to talk through for Dying Light 2. The newest patch, Hotfix 1.25.2, just landed, and while it's labeled a hotfix, it actually touches a surprising number of pain points people have been reporting across combat, events, UI, and stability. I'm going to walk you through what changed in plain language, why it matters if you've been grinding seasonal activities or chasing perfect runs, and how you can quickly confirm you're updated on your platform. I'll also throw in some I'll also throw in some practical tips for testing it out so you're not just reading patch notes, but actually feeling the improvements the next time you boot up. Let's start with the headline that I think a lot of folks will feel right away: performance in the tower raid. If you've been pushing deep floors there, you probably noticed the FPS spikes that could yank you out of the zone, especially on setups that otherwise felt smooth in the open world. Those hitches weren't just annoying. In a mode where timing and precise movement are your lifeline, a half-second freeze can be the difference between a slick, perfect route and a sloppy faceplant into a pack of biters. The hotfix addresses those spikes, and that's not just a quality of life thing. It's a confidence booster. When your frames are consistent, you start taking more daring routes, committing to jumps without second guessing, and that's exactly when Dying Light 2 feels at its best. If you want to test this yourself, pick a floor you know used to stutter, maybe an area with multiple light sources or lots of infected funneling in, and run it 2 or 3 times back to back. If you can chain wall runs, quick turns, and drop kicks without seeing a frame hiccup where you used to, you'll know the fix is doing its job. Another big one is a crash that could happen when returning to Teresa after finishing Dodger's challenge. If you've ever had your session end right when you're trying to hand in and get on with your night, you know how deflating that is. Crashes may not be glamorous fixes to talk about, but they're the foundation. No amount of new content matters if the game craters at key quest handoffs. With this sorted, that whole mini arc should be a smoother ride. If you encountered it before, consider revisiting the sequence and, once you're done, loiter in that area for a minute or two, switch tabs, open your inventory, and jog around the hand-in point to stress the scene a little. If you're still standing and no errors pop up, fantastic. There are some visual cleanups that will be subtle, but they matter because they chip away at that uncanny feeling when your character's presentation doesn't line up with lighting or gear. One of the fixes tackled inconsistencies between Aiden's shadow and body in certain situations, especially noticeable with specific seasonal weapons equipped. It sounds tiny until you catch it out of the corner of your eye mid-sprint and your brain goes, "Why does that shadow look wrong?" It's an immersion breaker, and while the city's atmosphere is moody and stylized, you still want it to obey its own rules. There was also a shoulder pad clipping issue that got resolved. If you're the type who likes your fashion as much as your function, that kind of clipping can drive you up the wall. The point here is the team isn't just chasing crashes, they're sanding down rough edges so the game looks as consistent as it plays. On the UI and inventory front, several nagging issues got attention. Tab switching in the player menu should behave better, which sounds mundane, but that menu is the hub for your build decisions. When you're juggling weapons, mods, and outfits, quick, predictable tabbing is the difference between "I'm theory crafting" and "I'm fighting the interface." There was also a vendor category mix-up with the bad office day outfit that got corrected, and some fixes around cosmetic and utility items like the Phantom of Death paraglider being purchasable multiple times when it shouldn't be. That one's important because it helps prevent the shop from feeling like a weird loop you can exploit or get confused by. You want to spend your time on choices that matter, not wondering if the UI is gaslighting you. If you're playing with the Van Aiden setup, you may have run into an issue crafting bolts. That's the kind of bug that short-circuits an entire playstyle. Archery and crossbow builds shine when you can keep the resource flow steady. Losing the ability to craft in the heat of a session kneecaps the whole rhythm. With that fixed, bolt users should feel way more viable again, and you can go back to that satisfying pattern of pick off, recover, craft, repeat, rather than swapping wildly to a backup melee because the bench just stopped working for you. Let's talk rewards and progression quirks. The update addresses cases where players weren't getting rewarded for topping the status effects applied score category. This is more important than it might first seem because it's essentially an incentive fix. If the game wants to reward diverse combat approaches, bleed, burn, shock, whatever, then the scoreboard and the rewards have to match. When they don't, players either give up on that style or feel robbed. With this cleanup, those builds regain their meaning. Alongside that, there were some tuning corrections to special event weapons like the Ultraviolence and Cutthroat Cutlass starting at level 3, which had created weird early balance spikes for some players and confusion for others who expected a different starting point. And there's a really neat little fix to the Scarecrow charm effect, so limb cutting won't mistakenly trigger on blunt weapons. I know dismemberment purists out there have been rolling their eyes every time a hammer pretended it was a cleaver. This correction makes the charm feel more intuitive. Sharp weapons slice, blunt weapons smash. That clarity matters for how you plan your loadout. If you were grinding the Halloween Showdown content, this hotfix quietly makes your life better. The volatile hunter bounty miscounting pumpkin tiles has been corrected, so your progress should reflect what you actually do in the world. Nothing saps your will to keep chasing limited time goals like seeing the counter lag behind your effort. Likewise, the elite rooftop objective text got cleaned up to match what you're actually fighting. It's a small thing, but objective text is the thread that ties the player's attention to the moment. If it calls for the wrong enemy type, you're left distrusting the UI, and that little seam of doubt is the kind that spreads. Event tracking also sees a valuable tweak. Candies collected on UGC maps now count toward the Collect Candies bounty. That's a nice nod to the custom content scene and a way to make all your time in the game, including community creations, feel more connected to official progression. If you love bouncing between developer-made routes and player-made playgrounds, you're not penalized for it anymore. There's also some under-the-hood housekeeping on level geometry, like a potential stuck spot on a desk wall at floor 14 getting smoothed out. You know those moments where you mantle over something at an odd angle and suddenly you're wedged, spamming jump and crouch and hoping the game blesses you with freedom? Fixes like this are the unglamorous heroes of a patch cycle. The fewer places in the world where you can trap yourself, the more confident you feel streaking through interiors at speed, cutting corners, cutting distance, and generally playing like the city is your parkour park instead of a minefield of invisible snags. One question I always get with a hotfix is it worth logging in for if I'm not actively running the event? In this case, yes, because even if you're not interested in seasonal gear or bounties, the performance and stability changes are universal improvements. The Tower Raid frame time work is the big ticket, but the Teresa crash, the player menu tabbing, and the crafting fix for a specific build path all land as quality of life boosts for anyone who's still progressing, farming, or just hopping in for a night run with friends. Think of it as a pass that sweeps up a bunch of little ways the game could be getting in your way. If you're on console, you'll see the update labeled as 1.083 on PS5 or 1.83 on Xbox, and that's your confirmation you've got the latest bits. On PC, Steam and Epic should grab it automatically, but you can nudge the client with a verify or a restart if it looks like nothing moved. Inside the game itself, pop into the news panel and you should see the notes reflected there. If your system swears you're current but you still see the bugs we just talked about, try the classic trifecta: hard reboot, cache clear where applicable, and, on PC, a quick integrity check. 9 times out of 10, that shakes loose a stuck download. Let me give you a couple of easy stress tests you can run the first night back. First, jump into Tower Raid and deliberately spam a few skill chains in a busy room. Sprint, wall run, quick 180, dropkick, then swap to a ranged shot and back to melee. The idea is to force animation transitions at moments when the engine is already juggling spawn logic and particle effects. If you used to notice micro stutter right there, keep an eye on it. Second, set yourself a mini challenge around status effects. Mod a couple of weapons to make sure you can apply different procs, then fight a mixed pack and watch the scoreboard when you're done. If your top category is indeed that status track and you see the reward you expect, you can check that box with confidence. Third, if you own the Scarecrow charm, throw it on a sharp weapon and a blunt weapon back to back, and go hunting for clean test cases, a single biter, one swing each. Just to confirm, blunt no longer pretends to be a sword. For those who bounced off the game a while ago and are wondering whether this is the moment to revisit, I'd say this patch isn't a flashy content drop, but it is a sign of steady, attentive maintenance.